Present.
Commissioner Skidmore.
Present.
I'd like to welcome everyone here in the audience as well as anyone watching or listening at home. We will begin today's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Pastor Nathan Mudd with Ottawa Community Church.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Lord, I will bless you at all times. Your praise will continually be on my lips. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. Lord, you seek us, and we come seeking you. And so together, even in this meeting, might we meet. Lord, I pray for things that are happening this week and this month, but especially for our teachers, for our families, for our kids. Oh God, would you give such a fruitful year, and with each student, would you intervene in special ways and use adults and even their peers to bring about a flourishing, just thriving in their life, and to excel in education and socially and skills. And so Lord, we pray a blessing for our families in this meeting. And so now help us give wisdom in these decisions, I pray, in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
We will next move on to public comments. Do we have any registered?
Yeah, we're registered.
Okay. Subject to the above restrictions, persons who wish to address the city commission regarding items on the agenda may do so at the time the agenda item is called. Persons who wish to address the city commission regarding items not on the agenda and that are under the jurisdiction of the city commission may do so at this time when called upon by the mayor. Comments on personnel matters and matters pending in court or with other outside tribunals are not permitted. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Any presentation is for information purposes only. The governing body will take comments under advisement. And we have George Ogle. Come on up, have a seat. Floor is yours.
There's more than this, but this is what I hastily wrote a while ago. Scribbled out a lot to make it a little better. I'm George Ogle. I live at 1305 South Elm Street in Ottawa, Kansas. I'm a home builder. I've built around 30 or so homes in Ottawa over the past few years. I'm currently attempting to put a 13-house subdivision in. I'm about to lose that opportunity due to mistakes that were immediately followed by incompetence by the city staff. I tried my hardest to avoid confrontation, especially with the planning department, because it easily could cause me more grief in the future, but I'm past the point of that being a factor. I requested and had a meeting with the city manager and was hopeful that he would find a solution. I received another email this afternoon that tells me I was either ignored or the communication between staff is worse than I originally thought. I've done everything asked of me in a timely manner. The city caused a 6-week delay by not sending comments within the allotted time set by them. When I checked my emails, all preliminary plat questions from a second submittal were answered on June 11th. Then on June 23rd, after allowing the time the city would respond if needed, we sent the final plat and grading applications in. On June 30th, within the allotted time for city to respond, they did, by saying they couldn't answer those questions until all preliminary plat questions were answered. I was confused. So I checked through all emails and had my civil engineers do the same. We'd answered all questions on June 11th. I went to City Hall in person and asked staff what they meant. We'd answered everything asked. I was told no, we had not. I was adamant we had. Staff agreed to find out what was going on. I do not remember how many days before I finally went back to City Hall wondering why still nothing, and was again told that all questions weren't answered. I again insisted they were and couldn't understand how they'd had the answers since June 11th and still said they didn't. Staff then set an in-person meeting for July 24th to get everything figured out. While in that meeting, a set of questions that were not given, not sent to us ever in June, were given to my civil engineers right then. We continued the meeting and addressed those questions. It was mentioned by the city engineer that one option was to still immediately proceed with setting the preliminary plat to the planning commission, with it being contingent on the city engineer approving final questions. The next day, my civil engineer sent an email agreeing that immediate preliminary plat submittal was appropriate as the city had everything needed to do so. Staff did not agree, demanding all questions were answered and reviewed, disagreeing with the three civil engineers. I emailed reminding that it was suggested and was told it would not be done. These questions would have been answered in June if the city would have not made the mistake of not sending them. They would have been answered the 1st of July if the city had recognized something was wrong and checked their emails, finding out that they made a mistake. The fact that this was not done and I was spoken to condescendingly, like it had to be a problem on my side, is unacceptable and shows incompetence. At one point in person, I again reminded staff of the city engineer's idea of going ahead and sending to the planning commission, and to my face, looking me in the eye, said, and I quote, "He didn't say that." I believe I'm not going to achieve this subdivision for no other reason than the city of Ottawa. I have until August 29th to decide my next course of action. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We'll make sure those concerns get addressed. Next, we have appointments, proclamations, recognitions, nominations, and public hearings. We have nothing under that. We will move on to consent agenda, which includes the minutes from July 23rd, 2025 meeting and the agenda approval. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Seeing none, we will skip over unfinished business with nothing under that. We'll move on to new business item 11A.
Reinvestment Housing Incentive District, RHID policy revisions.
This is the first of two presentations incorporating statutory and procedural changes in preparation for the adoption of the final policy. And we have Director Landis.
Thank you. Oh, this is the low chair. I'm all finished short. Okay, so before we really dive into the meat of this, I just want to mention that City Manager Silka and I and our City Attorney Blaine Finch have all worked on some of these revision drafts to bring to you, and that the idea of coming together is really to get some of your comments or feedback on the policy framework that we put together here, and then that we would bring that to you at a next, either the next meeting or a future meeting, with some of those actual proposed changes to the policy itself. But really what we put together here, we believe that there are a couple of things that we need to incorporate that are statutory changes, and there are other procedural changes that we have recommended here that we believe support the housing growth in the community by helping to lower the cost of using this incentive option and reducing some of the barriers for our developers. So the RHID, or the Reinvestment Housing Incentive District policy, is actually inside of the economic incentive policy that the city has. And so all of our incentive tools are listed within that same resolution 1797-19, which was adopted in 2019. The RHID incentive tool, really the purpose is it supports the residential development by capturing the increased property tax revenue and then using that to reimburse the developer for some of their infrastructure costs incurred. You'll see in the next slide that it has been expanded, but that was the base purpose behind creating the tool. Our current policy has I've listed just a few things here, but its eligible uses were for public infrastructure costs. It's pay as you go, so we're not upfront financing anything for the developer. They're paying for it and then they're being reimbursed over a period of time, up to 25 years. It requires approval from the Kansas Secretary of Commerce, and it does require a feasibility study. That's part of the RHID Act under the state statute. Our policy also has within it that it applies to only 10 or more rental homes. It does require a but-for analysis, and the deposit of the $5,000, which is less than any other incentive tool at this time, would be used towards analytical and bond counsel expenses. These are the two expansions that have been made to the act over time at the state level. The first one was in 2021, and this added the option to use RHID for upstairs living in your central downtown business district. So regardless of the number of floors, it just can't be used on the first floor. It can't be used for commercial businesses, but for any type of residential living in your downtown business district. And those buildings have to be 25 years or older for it to be used there. And then in 2023, they renamed it. It was called the Rural, and now it's Reinvestment Housing. They expanded it for some of the larger counties and restricted the larger cities and counties how they can use it, and based on population. That doesn't really apply to us at all here. And then it also allows for residential renovation, which we call vertical construction. So each time we've come to you, it's, they can use it for public infrastructure now, or if that's already been in place for more than 10 years, they can use it for the vertical construction as well.
Director Landis, on that, for the buildings, kind of like the central business district, is there a minimum? I know before it was 10 for rentals. Is it a singular building could apply for an RHID, or is it similar to, you needing a larger area?
It could be a singular building. It could be, you could also group multiple buildings and that would become a district, but then the incentive tool itself could be applied to individual buildings within that district. You could do the same even across town for residential building. You could establish an area as a district and then have separate developments within that would qualify differently based on what you were building. So I think it could be used in different ways. This is a long list, and I actually, when I was rereading it, wish I had put it in a little bit different order. So happy to answer any questions you have here. There's a lot here, but our recommended changes are one, that we update the language to modernize it and to put it in alignment with the RHID Act, which really needs to be done. We're recommending that we remove the language that says it's for 10 or more rental homes, which would open it up for sale properties and also for rent properties. By doing that, you're really using the incentive tool for any of the housing needs that were outlined in your housing needs analysis that you do every other year. It talks about both rental and for sale. We currently, within our incentive policy, it has $10,000 deposit for any incentive, and then it goes on to say only $5,000 for an RHID incentive. The difficulty with that is that the cost of doing an RHID today is much higher than just the $5,000. And it's actually a little bit confusing for developers, and especially new developers within our community, looking to use this tool, thinking that might only, that the cost is fairly limited on this. But really, the way that it's designed today, it could be between $20,000, $40,000, or $50,000 just to just the upfront cost just for getting this tool in place. What we're recommending is that we bump that to 10,000, but a variety of things would happen instead. And 5,000 of that could go towards bond counsel then, but the other 5,000 would come towards the city and the analysis that we would do instead. And in the next bullet point, what we're recommending is that right now it requires a but-for analysis, and that is an expensive part of the process. And if you don't have a built out pro forma already, they're basically developing one for you. And it could be, $20,000 just to move through that piece of the process. Instead, what we're finding is there are some communities that are waiving that but-for analysis for RHID as long as the project fits within that housing needs analysis that you have. So if it's already something that fits within one of those categories, they're waiving the but-for analysis, and instead they're using a fiscal impact or a financial impact. It's basically a spreadsheet, but it determines some of the same information. What do you believe that, how, under this calculation, how much increment is it going to generate over a period of time? You would plug and play their cost for the development. There's parts and pieces that would be missing, that you wouldn't get an internal rate of return. You wouldn't necessarily get a market comparison for other properties within your local area. So it's a little bit of give and take, but the idea being that this would help to save a major cost to the developer up front. And that would be the purpose of increasing the deposit with half of that being non-refundable and the other half of that going towards bond counsel costs, but really then saving that extensive cost for the but-for analysis. We would want to keep that in place. We would suggest that you would want to keep it in place for projects that might have layered incentives or are way more complex. So maybe they're trying to use any type of other incentive tool and layer it with an RHID. That's a really good example of when you would really want to go back and do that but-for analysis to ensure that you're not over incentivizing a project. For sure, especially if some of those outside incentives are coming, from another agency, the state or federal level, grant or some sort of, whether it's a low income tax credit project or they're trying to layer a benefit district or any of those types of things, would be a great instance in when you would want to require it. And then, of course, our policy does list all of the eligible costs in order to eliminate some confusion. There's a really great list already on KHRC's website under the RHID Act, and you can reference that there. So we're suggesting that we strike those out of our policy. And then the rest of this, I think, is just streamlining the process by rearranging the way that we bring some of these items to you. We could eliminate some of the anxiety from this process for our developers. So currently, they bring an application in and they pay their fee. They also bring in a deposit and we start the process with an outside financial analyst and bond counsel by getting started. And so they're already really incurring costs before we've ever even brought it to you for consideration to see if you find it in line with the housing needs analysis, and it still hasn't been to the state to determine if they would even consider creating a district. Those two things have to happen before you as a governing body could ever even consider it. So what we're suggesting is that we rearrange that process a little bit, saving the applicant some money up front by getting it in front of you first, and then we're working already in the background towards getting some of their stuff lined out. And so they're not incurring costs until they know that at least the state has approved that they would create the district. Then the rest of it is really a more minimalized process for the fiscal analysis and then negotiating how many years and what the total amount might be. So trying to rearrange it to make it a little easier, trying to rearrange it so that they're not having to come out of pocket so early in the process without any knowledge of knowing whether or not you as a governing body would even approve, want to move ahead with this type of a district. This kind of outlines that a little bit more. So the orange would be the rearranged part of the process. The blue on the bottom is how it is now. There's an agreement, there's a funding, there's the application, the funding agreement where they have to make their deposit. Then there's a but-for test. The resolution comes to you then to even find that it's in line with the needs analysis, and then it goes to the state. But what we're suggesting is what I outlined for you just now. And then in some cases, there would still be a but-for, but in most cases, there would not be in the new recommended process. And then it would go to the incentive review committee and come back to you for the resolution that you intend. And then we hold the public hearing, and then we basically put it all in place through an ordinance and the development agreement. So couple more points that I think are really important here. So the idea here is that we really want to realign this and make sure that we're fairly assessing the cost for the incentive tool, not just for the developer, but also for the city at large, and making sure that we're not incurring costs because of an incentive request, but also reducing some of those developer costs, especially when they're proposing a project for a housing need that you've already identified that is something that's absolutely needed in our community. Use of this tool really allows the investment of that valuation increment to support that housing construction. If they weren't going to build those homes, you would only continue to get the same amount that you're going to continue getting, even with the RHID incentive in place. So none of that goes away. Whatever value you're currently getting from that piece of property, you will continue to get. You don't lose any of that. And at some future point, based on the specified period of time that you approve for that incentive is when that would come on fully onto the tax rolls. And then also the city retains 2.5% administrative fee from each one of those annual distributions. And that is actually part of our entire policy, not just the RHID portion of the policy. And then under legal considerations, every piece of an incentive tool has legal considerations. It's built in by statute and all kinds of laws that go along with it. So our bond counsel and legal counsel are always involved in those proceedings. That's a lot of information, but is there anything that you want to ask about or talk about? Anything you have concerns over or things that you thought we might be recommending that we didn't put into here?
I think it makes sense, realigning it to where it flows better for the developers, and that makes more sense to not have them put money up front and when they don't even know if the process is gonna be approved. So I appreciate the work. And this says it's the first of 2 presentations, so you'll be bringing it back to us again, is that?
Yeah, so it's adopted by resolution.
Okay.
So we would have to bring back to you the actual revised language for the policy, which is adopted by the resolution, which would be an amended resolution.
Gives us a little more time for, if we think of questions
Mhm.
after. Any other questions or comments?
I like the fact that, you're trying to save the developer money up front because as I've said for years, we're probably not gonna get a big time developer coming to Ottawa. The margins are too good in the Johnson counties and the Douglas counties. That's where they're gonna wanna build. So what we've seen a lot lately is local people become developers. And they don't have the deep pockets as those other individuals. So saving them some of that, some money up front certainly could, not only with the long-term incentive, but short-term incentivize them to want to develop some land, because as Mr. Ogle pointed out earlier, he's built 30-some homes. There's another individual that's built 100-some homes. I mean, there's a lot of infill that's been done, but we're running out of those infill lots. So eventually somebody's gonna have to develop some land. And, if that comes from a local person, that'd be great. And this is certainly a great tool for them to utilize.
Okay. Thank
Any
you
other
very much.
questions or anything you'd like to see us change or add? No.
Just the question I'd have is on the bond council, the 5,000, it's refundable? Or if the cost came in less than the 5, I guess.
If it came in less than the 5, it's typically going to be somewhere much higher than that. It could be in the 10, 15 or 20,000, depending on the project. But if they were to stop the process and there was no or minimal work done, that would be a refundable portion of that.
On the waiving the but-for analysis and, going with the housing needs, and analysis there. Is there anything built into that specifies how often we have to do a housing needs analysis? So that way,
Yes.
if it's a 15-year-old analysis at some point, is there
Yeah.
something in that kind of keeps that wheel turning as well?
Great question. So the RHID Act under the state statute requires it every 2 years. So, and this is our second one that we've just recently had that we reviewed in March. So that's good for these next 2 years. And by outlining those categories of how many homes you might need in each one of those categories, we've begun internally by staff. We're working towards finding a way to track those through, not just by what's planned or coming to the table in the future, but also those that are being permitted currently or will be in the very near future permitted. So that you can see then if someone were to bring in yet another project where we've already basically filled that and we really need it in one place or the other, we would upfront have a conversation with them and say, here's another area where we really need, homes in this price range, whether it's rental or for sale. And that, if you decide to move ahead, I mean, I could see that this might be a case. We always need the housing here, but if you're actually going to ask for an incentive, the but-for analysis would be beneficial for you to determine do they really need that incentive in order to build something that's already been built? Again, that's a tough spot to be in because I don't know that that's gonna happen for a while, but it could. And so I think that would be something where we'd wanna exercise the use of that to see what those internal rates of return might be, and if it's really a need that you could have filled. I do think we have conversations with developers all the time, and they ask questions like, what do you need here? What is it that you're seeking the most? And so we have an opportunity most times to say, well, these are some of the areas that are outlined by the housing needs analysis, and these are some of those areas that no one's even talking about yet. And so that gives them ideas way up front as to where they'd like to be working towards.
You mentioned earlier, that the incentive could pay out up to 25 years. I know we've had some discussion about kind of aligning that more towards the NRP and making it more of a 10-year process. Is that another discussion or another bullet point that maybe it should be brought up to the commission to have that part, that discussion?
That's a really great point. So, the first two RHIDs we brought to you were for rental homes, and those rental homes continue to bring revenue to that developer year over year over year, or at least you would assume that they'll keep those long term. And so the idea behind shortening the term of that reimbursement, because they'll have continued and future revenue coming in from those homes, it really did fit with that conversation that we had. When you have for sale homes, and especially if you have for sale homes that are in the lower end of your market range for sale prices, those are going to take much longer to generate the increment to pay back any portion of that public infrastructure. So your timeline really does extend. For example, we have one in the works now that it's really not a large amount, but it will take almost 20 years to recoup that amount. And that's the one that you've received a presentation on, where they shown that even without the incentive, it was lower than what they would expect a rate of return to be. And with the incentive, it still wasn't at the highest end. And so, yes, we can talk about that. But it did cause me to backpedal just a little bit from our initial conversation about should we to the 10 years.
And it makes sense. I mean, so obviously you're just explaining it's a case by case then,
It is.
So and if that's the case, then I don't think that's a conversation we need to have then.
Yeah, and I think we could also, when we bring that recommendation to you, or when we first bring that resolution, when we talk about what the intent, that development plan and what that fiscal analysis has panned out to be, that'll be a great time to talk about it before we publish the public hearing and move into the development agreement time. For each one of those projects individually, I really do think it's gonna end up being a case by case.
Thank you.
On this, I know, Kansas Commerce and places like that, state really loves stacking incentives as much as possible and those types of things. I'm assuming based on exactly what this is, this wouldn't apply to have an RHID district and then within it NRP on homes. Because that's kind of the same thing, correct?
Yeah.
The incentive you would be getting NRP on, you're already getting compensated for the RHID.
Yeah, it's the same revenue source. So anything that uses your property tax increment, you can only have one of, because there's only one increment. So RHID, the like NRP, typically you wouldn't be able to use that. Your TIF district would be the same thing. So if it's in a TIF district, you could either use one or the other. There's probably one is more beneficial to the project. And again, it depends on the project, how much infrastructure there is remaining in that site that they're going to be using, and versus the amount of time that it could pay out over. So a TIF district is 20 years and RHID is 25, but there are other benefits for the TIF versus the RHID. So it is really going to depend on what they're trying to accomplish with that project and how soon they need that payback. But you can only use that one revenue source.
Yeah.
So, yes. Yeah. And I think even like on an IRB, you could do a property tax rebate from an IRB if it's a rental home, because that's considered a business or a commercial business. And that would also be an increment that you wouldn't be able to use. So those are all,
Yeah.
they're basically all using the same
Same.
source. Now, if you were to use an outside source, oftentimes when you apply for MIH,
Mhm.
the state would like to see that the city has some sort of contribution towards that same project, so they're not the only ones at the table. So oftentimes they'll ask, are you intending to apply for housing investor tax credits? Are you applying for an RHID? Are you applying for a multitude of things? So often our MIH applications are better supported if there's some sort of second layer to
Yeah.
that application.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Okay,
I really appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
we will move on to item 12, comments by our city manager.
Thank you. Quick overview of happenings around the city. You may have seen our unofficial mascot, the otter around town here in Ottawa. And so we ask you to keep an eye peeled if you haven't already seen Ottawa. Our electric production, they began installation of a rebuilt cooling tower water pump, which you can see, which filters water down through that on a cascade to help keep our engines cool and efficient. Our police department, want to commend them for completing their inaugural teen academy, which received great feedback. We had our master police officer start canine training with the service dog Cash. Our police officer Trenton Roberts was sworn in as the newest team member. And Dare Camp was held July 31st to August 2nd, and another successful season in campers was completed. We repaired damaged bricks around the pillar there, Public Works at Legacy Square, where someone had backed into the post, causing some damage. And then want to highlight, this should be, I know I touched on this the last time in passing, but we believe that actually our final regular meeting in the study session will be today, with our next meeting on August 13th occurring in the newly renovated commission chambers. And we want to highlight that this marks the completion of a $250,000 modernization project funded entirely with federal dollars through the ARPA Act, and that we use no local property or sales tax dollars in the project itself. And the purpose was to enhance public accessibility to public meetings through an improved functionality and aesthetics, focusing on technology upgrades and improving our live streaming capabilities for all of our city boards and public meetings using the space. And you'll see a new curved dais, which will allow for a more viewer-friendly experience, as well as for an active discussion and the ability for commissioners to get a better sightline on all of the governing body members. And really the big thing is our comprehensive technology upgrade that really overhauled and modernized the audio and visual display and streaming systems for our public meetings. And you'll see those in there. Because the purpose of the improvements is to strengthen our transparency, accessibility, and community engagement, so folks are aware of what's happening in their local government and the folks that we serve every day. Want to ask folks if they're interested to participate on 2 rounds of the city's first inaugural citywide championship. So we ask you to sign up. It's $40 on August 16th and August 17th, with 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. tea times respectively. Upcoming events at the OMA, we have the Beach Boys Serpent USA Tribute on August 16th. And then I want to have everyone come out to, Clever Max, which is, Friday, August 8th here at Legacy Square. So hope folks are able to attend. Want to encourage everyone to, complete a survey if they haven't already done so. That's online at ottawaks.gov/survey. That will close at 7 a.m. tomorrow. To date, we've had 926 electronic responses received online, and we've had 27 hard copy responses received to date. And some upcoming items for next week's agenda: continued discussion on our RHID economic policy development. You'll receive and file a report from Franklin County Emergency Communications Center and their budget presentation. We'll have discussion and presentation for Premier Auto's closure and termination of phase 1 of the industrial revenue bond. We'll present consideration of a change order for the 15th Street and Main traffic signal that will go to increasing our project allotment for the design, survey, and construction inspection for the sidewalk extension from 15th Street to Kansas Park, there where the Prairie Spirit Trail intersects. And then we'll also provide a highlight of the community survey results, which again, we should start getting tomorrow and being able to go through and then start to craft some action items going forward. And that concludes my report. If there aren't any questions for city staff or myself.
Was there some kind of golf tournament this weekend, city, county golf tournament?
I think I did see some.
This coming.
Say it again.
This coming Saturday.
This coming, so what's that? I just didn't know what that was, but just is that, what's different from that than the one on the 16th?
This is the one this weekend is city and county employees tournaments
Okay.
that they've held every year, traditionally out of town. So this will be their first year back at our course. And this one is a citywide championship. Lots of other courses have this, and so it's your chance to hold the title.
For all citizens, everyone can
Yeah.
participate, doesn't matter, you don't have to be
Anyone
an
can
employee,
participate.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We had a lot of people sign up for this weekend though, for the city.
Fair amount, yeah. We've got some really good golfers.
Mhm.
I think we have 17 people.
Wow.
Good.
Is your team in?
No, I'm just a caddy. at, Maiden Fest.
We have, just to make note on that, the city is being fully funded by 2 different vendors. Caterpillar on the county side and PDC, professional engineering consultants on the city side. So all funds are taken care of by those 2 entities. No funds are waived, no fees are waived. We're all paying green fees through those 2 entities. So if you see us out there, know that those folks are supporting us in that way.
That concludes our report. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to comments by our governing body. We'll start with Commissioner Crowley,
I have no comment.
Commissioner Taylor,
None at this time.
Commissioner Skidmore.
Just last night, there was a good response, I thought, with the National Night Out. I just want to thank all the city staff working to make all that happen, coordinate that, and Adam, all your work too. So it was well, I thought it was well received and I think everybody liked it, so it worked out well.
Mayor Pro Tem Clayton.
I was just gonna ask, Chief about, I saw that camp is going on. Is it complete? Is it still ongoing?
Dare camp?
Dare camp?
They were over.
Over? Okay.
It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday last week. Had just about 85 kids that attended and the best dare camp weather. If we can have that every year,
Yeah.
all of us will be really happy, but, that is an absolute collaborative effort from many city departments, county departments, state partners, sponsors. That camp is funded fully by the Ottawa Police Foundation through some generous donations. And, we've already started planning for next year.
Awesome.
So it's a year-round effort to pull that off for us.
Fantastic. Thank you. I just wanted to see at some point bring up, at Haley Park, there are a few spots for sure that are definite ankle breakers that I think especially we've got a lot of traffic coming downtown over the next 6 to 8 weeks for sure. I can put in a request for that, but just to kind of call that out, that I think some of those should really be looked at if we can, on those bricks as you kind of walk in there.
The
off of
trees
Seventh.
could need
The
trimmed.
tree,
too.
yeah. But, you know, before somebody steps out backwards and rolls an ankle at car show or tractor show or sometime there for that. And then I wanted to follow up, and I didn't get a chance, Brian, were we having a TGT administration? I know there was last, 2 weeks ago, I think it was brought up about kind of discussing the administration portion. of
Yes, we will, and, we'll have that presented here in a future meeting.
Okay. Awesome. And then, only other comment is kids going back to school. It couldn't come soon enough, so I'm excited for that. I don't think all the teachers and everybody else are, but we're ready to get that started, so.
And I have no comment. We'll move on to announcements. August 13th, 2025, we have a city commission meeting at 4 p.m. at City Hall. August 20th, 2025, city commission meeting at 10 a.m. at City Hall. And seeing no other business before us, I will adjourn.